You ever have that strange feeling that a place is older than it looks? Like, you step onto the land and, well, it's almost as if something beneath the soil exhales. Puerto Rico is exactly that kind of place. Beautiful, warm, alive. But underneath all of that, there's something older humming quietly in the hills. Something ancient, trying, in its own way, to be heard. Most people don't notice it. They come for the beaches, the food, the music, the rhythm of everyday life. But if you wander inland, if you drift into the green mountains, if you stand still long enough for the world around you to get quiet, you begin to feel the island's deeper heartbeat. And that heartbeat? It's carved into stone. Massive stones. Carved stones. Mysterious stones. Stones that look at you. And the thing is, these stones don't belong to the simple version of Puerto Rico's history we're usually told. They don't follow the timeline we expect. They don't match the styles we think should be here. They stand there, weathered, solemn, watching you, like they're waiting for someone to remember their story. The Caguana Ceremonial Site is where most people begin. And honestly, the moment you step into Caguana, you feel something shift. You walk through the trees, the sunlight breaks into the plaza, and suddenly the world feels intentional. The air's heavy, the ground feels important, and even if you're not the spiritual type, you can sense that this was a place where something sacred happened. Something big. The official explanation says it was a Taíno ceremonial center, used for rituals, gatherings, maybe even ancient games. But then you look closer. You look at the stones. You see the carvings. You trace the spirals with your fingers. And you realize some of this doesn't quite fit. Some of the stones feel older. Some of the carvings feel deeper. Some of the symbols feel, well, like they come from a culture we don't fully know. The spirals, especially, they're everywhere. Perfect curves carved with a kind of force and confidence you don't see in casual decoration. And spirals, they're tricky. Spirals are universal, sure. They show up in ancient cultures from Ireland to Peru to Polynesia. But the ones here in Puerto Rico, they feel like they're pointing to something, like they're marking something. Maybe cycles of the sun, maybe the path of the stars, maybe tides or currents, or maybe something more personal, something spiritual. But you don't get answers in Caguana, just questions and whispers. So you keep going, deeper into the island, deeper into the mountains, to Utuado. And Utuado, wow, it doesn't welcome you exactly. It watches you. The land rises and folds around you like the ribs of some ancient creature. And inside those folds, in quiet valleys and mossy clearings, you start to see the stones. Megaliths. Not random rocks, no. These are shaped, carved, placed. Some stand tall like guardians, others squat like ancient seats. And some have faces. Human faces carved into stone. Faces with expressions, joy, sorrow, warning, indifference. Faces that look like they're remembering something you can't see. You get the feeling that these weren't decorations. They weren't idols. They weren't casual carvings. They were memory. Someone, some culture, wanted the future to remember these faces, these stories, these spirits. And honestly, it makes your skin prickle a little. Because the more you look at these stones, the more you realize something unsettling. These don't look purely Taíno. Not entirely. Not fully. There's something older here. Something pre-Taino. Something from a people who left almost nothing behind except stones carved with their presence. And as you walk among them, you start to wonder how many waves of humanity passed through Puerto Rico long before the first European ever set foot here. It's the carvings in Mayagüez that push that feeling even deeper. You arrive expecting more of the same, but instead you see shapes, symbols, you weren't prepared for. Some of them feel almost Mesoamerican in style. Angular lines, bold eyes, circular motifs, dual faces, patterns that echo cultures thousands of miles away. And I mean, sure, maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's just human creativity repeating itself across time and geography. But when you look at those carvings, and you realize they appear nowhere else in the Caribbean except here, you start to wonder whether ancient people traveled more than we think, whether they shared ideas across the sea, whether Puerto Rico wasn't an isolated island at all, but a stop on an ancient maritime network. What's startling is how often the spirals appear again. Always spirals. Always that perfect looping symbol carved into rock with intention. And after a while, you start to see them not as symbols, but as sentence fragments, pieces of a forgotten language. And the more you think about it, the more the puzzle takes shape. Caguana with its ceremonial precision, Utuado with its ancestral statues, Mayagüez with its foreign-feeling glyphs, spirals binding them all together. You begin to see Puerto Rico not as a simple island, but as a crossroads, a place where migrations met, where cultures layered themselves over centuries, where knowledge was shared and forgotten and reshaped again and again. A place where some of the oldest stories in the Caribbean still sleep in the ground. And here's the part people avoid saying out loud. The timeline doesn't quite line up. Some stones are older than the accepted dates. Some styles don't match any known group. Some symbols appear suddenly without local predecessors. And some stones, found in caves, along rivers, deep in forests, sit in places that feel intentionally hidden. There are sites locals know, but archaeologists don't. Places on private land where moss grows thick on stones that clearly aren't natural. Places where the pattern of stones looks deliberate. Circles, rows, altars. Places whispered about, but rarely studied, because they don't fit neatly into any category. Some of these hidden stones feel ceremonial. Some feel like memorials. Some feel like boundary markers. And some feel like warnings. There's a story I once heard about a single stone deep in the central mountains. Tall, narrow, carved with a face no one can identify. Locals say not to touch it. They say the air around it feels wrong. They say the birds don't sing near it. And you know what? Everyone who visits swears they walked away feeling watched. Puerto Rico is full of places like that. Forgotten sites waiting to be found, waiting to be understood, waiting to speak. And maybe that's the real mystery. Not that these ancient people carved the stones, but that the stones survived, standing like silent guardians, like libraries of memories etched in stone. When you finally step back and look at everything, the plazas, the faces, the spirals, the alignments, the hidden sites, you realize something simple but profound. The island remembers, even when we don't. These stones, these patient, enduring witnesses, they're trying to tell us something. About migration, about spirituality, about ancestors and cosmology and cycles of time, about a people who walked these lands long before history bothered to write their name. You walk away from these sites different than when you arrived. A little quieter, a little more aware, a little less certain that we know as much as we think we do. Because once you've stood in front of a stone carved 1,000 years ago, staring into the eyes of a face whose maker disappeared into the fog of time, you feel something shift inside you. And as you leave, the island seems to murmur, to breathe out through its trees and its rivers and its wind through the mountains. Almost as if the stones themselves are whispering, "We were here. Remember us." And you can't help but whisper back, "I hear you." This is Tales Beyond Times, where the old world still speaks, and where the stones, older than memory, older than history, older than the stories we tell ourselves, never stop calling.